When I saw the vision of what I could be and I had a choice to make, I chose success. Your credit report is like a report card to the banks. It literally just says, hey, this person is someone who should, you can lend money to, or this person, look, they at risk. They gonna run off with your money. Understand that you can be great at your business. You can be great at, understanding what you do as your field, but you also gotta understand the literacy side of finances when it comes to credit or even getting access to grants. Most people will start building their credit and then get a late payment or they forget to do this. Like, you can't do that. Step one is just actually having the proper mindset. Most people are afraid because they lack education. You lack knowledge. Anytime you walk down a road that you've never been down before, you're going to be afraid. What I tell people is that you're either growing or you're dying. Even when I started my entrepreneur journey, I watched out for people that made me think it was okay to be normal, made me think it's okay to be average. Too often we hang around people and it's like they're average, so they want you to be average. No, I'm not with that. I'm looking for people that want to be above average, that want to be phenomenal. The biggest thing that people have to do not to return to the same position they were in before is...
Welcome to another episode of Access Granted, where we give you exclusive access to entrepreneurs that are killing it in their industry. I'm super excited today because if you want to lock in and learn how you can get access to $50,000 to $100,000 or more in funding for your business, we have Chief SBS Struggle Before Success right here with us at the table, getting ready to give us some game on how to fund our business. Welcome to Access Granted, and thank you for being here.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Yeah. It's time to give them some access to funding. So
I love it.
Let's talk about it.
How you feeling?
I'm doing amazing. It's another day in paradise, so I always tell people I'm living the dream.
That's good. That's good. Well, first, I want to thank you because you show up in so many ways. Like anytime I call, anytime I ask you, can you speak to my community? Can you show up in my challenge? Can you be on my podcast? You're like, absolutely. Yeah. And you're always ready to provide value and make an impact. So I want to say thank you because there are not a lot of people out there who just show up the way that you do. So I want to give you your flowers.
No, I appreciate it.
Just for making it happen. But I want to learn more about, how you started on this journey and why you do what you do.
Yeah, I started off broke, I started off broke. I was a college dropout. Grew up in the inner city of Baltimore, Maryland. Mom and dad, worked full time. So I watched my family pretty much do the best they could to provide and put food on the table. But I always just wanted more. And, one thing about Baltimore, like when it comes to your environment, right, you see a lot of things happen. You see drugs, you see, like one of my best friends got shot at 12 years old, right, when I was young. So it was something I already knew that I wanted to do something different with life. And, so even with the college dropout, right, it didn't look like it was going the proper way. I had hoop dreams, like I wanted to go to the NBA, like any young kid growing up in the inner city. But I grew 5'7", so... I had to look at something different. So while I was in college, right before I dropped out, I got introduced to network marketing. And that was my very first business. It introduced me to personal development. So listening to the Jim Rohns of the world, the Tony Robbins, starting to really read books. And one of the biggest things I tell people is that you gotta change your philosophy. So growing up in Baltimore too, it's a lot of cut corners. You don't really want to put the work in. Like it's a lot of things where it's always looking to take a shortcut. And I think that when I got introduced to network marketing, it was like a vision of what could happen if I wanted to be successful. It was my first vision of seeing someone that was black, that was in business, that was successful, but that wasn't selling drugs, that wasn't an NBA player, wasn't an NFL player, that wasn't an actor. And so at that particular point, I had a decision to make. So, even back then growing up in Baltimore, I was, genuinely I was using Percocets, smoking weed, chasing the women. I had gotten to things that really wasn't conducive for success. And so when I saw the vision of what I could be and I had a choice to make, I chose success. So I stopped using drugs. I started locking in more of my goals, my dreams, and really focusing on personal development. And then really that was the biggest work that I did was the inner work on myself, listening to different philosophies, listening to the Jim Rohns every single day, challenge to succeed, riding around, just listening to that type of stuff. And I turned the music on and I turned the music off and I turned my life on.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think there's so many people who get stuck in their environment and they don't figure out what they can do to shift, or they don't make the changes that they need to make to kind of change their environment and change their surrounding. And you made a decision, like, success is what I want, and you went after that. So congratulations to you. That's huge. But you're taking that and now you are pouring into others and educating others and giving them an opportunity. I watch you on social media often, and I recently seen a video where you and your mom were together, and I think y'all were walking in the bank together. And I was like, that's so dope to hear your story now, and then to see all of the amazing things that you're doing. I recently just retired my mom. And people ask me all the time, like, why do you go so hard? Why do you work so hard? And I'm like, I know where we came from. I know the hardships that we went through. I know the struggles that my family went through. So to be able to be in a position to where now I'm able to provide for my mom. And it sounds like you are doing the same. How does that make you feel? Just to know that now you have changed, the decisions that you made are made for yourself now impact your family and everybody around you.
Well, I tell people all the time, you got to have a real reason why. You know what I'm saying? Most people are not successful because they're selfish, right? It's really all about them, so their goals are about them. They want to make money for themselves. And so a lot of times when it comes to putting in the work and doing different things don't necessarily happen for you because you're just so selfish. It's not really about someone else. And so that's what happened for me. Like, my mom was my number one supporter. My dad's been in my life too. So, I had a good, my grandma, I had a good support system in general. Like, I just grew up in an environment where I was able to see certain things and make certain choices. But when I switched my mindset and I wanted to become successful, my mom was my number one supporter. So even when I was, involved in network marketing, and I still am, but even at that time when I was going to different business conferences and things like that, and I needed money, I would rely on my mom. I would lean on my mom. But, my thing was, like, I always had a dream. I always knew where I was going, right? Because it wasn't where I came from, it was where I was going. But I just needed help. I didn't know about credit or getting access to funding. I didn't know about getting access to grants as a business owner. So really, a lot of time when you are pursuing success, it does take money to invest in yourself, right? To get in conferences, to get in the rooms, take the trips, get on the flights. And so even, for me, my mom was like my number one support system. She always had my back when I needed her. And so how it feels today really is, it's a blessing. I'm blessed to be able to say that the decisions that I did make turned out where I can retire my mom. So, she hasn't worked in years. We pay all of her bills, phone bill, rent, everything that she pretty much needs, right? Cars. So everything that she pretty much needs is taken care of today. And I'm really thankful and grateful that I get a chance to take care of my mom. But that was one of my biggest support system, but also my biggest reason why I used to work so hard, because I watched my mom work hard. I watched my mom hustle. I watched my mom do it as a single mom, try to, own property, not knowing about funding or credit, not knowing about grants. So, I watched my mom try to get one of her properties up and running, and she didn't do it by the proper code, and an inspector came in and told her she had to dig all the work up. So she put about $15,000 into it. The inspector came in and said, hey man, you did it the wrong way. You got to dig all this stuff up, but mind you, for someone who's doing it with their own cash, it bootstraps you. So I seen my mom just go through so much. And so really I get my work ethic from my mom, and a lot of the way I see the world and stuff like that, because she goes against the grain. Got it from her. So it to me, I'm thankful, I'm blessed. I give it all really to the man above, to Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, because without that support system, it would, I don't know where I would be today. So I'm really super thankful. I thank God for my mom every single day. But it was one of my major reasons why I hustle hard. And then, by me also having a daughter at 24 years old, that was really like the cherry on top. That was really what made me really, really go hard and really figure it out. Like, because once you bring a life into this world and now you got somebody that depends on you every single day, now you have a real reason why, you can't make excuses and things like that. And so, all of that really shaped, my wanting to become successful, my yearning for success, my drive and goal to really be hungry for information and knowledge and things like that. Because, they say if you know better, you'll do better. Most of the time where we come from, we don't know any better. So we just do what we see. And most people don't understand how that, in terms of your environment, the things you see and all that, how it really shapes the decisions that you make. And then really you can make bad choices because you don't operate on a new level of thinking. So most people upgrade their iPhones, upgrade their Androids, but they don't upgrade their operating systems, right? Good. And so it's really important to make sure you work on that type of stuff. But the man I am today and being able to take care of my mom is because I definitely worked on upgrading my operating system, not just my iPhone.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's powerful. So I want to dive into, there's so many things online, and I know a lot of people see it, but you can get funding for your business, and, you go set up an LLC, you can go into the bank and get, $50,000, no docs. There's so many things online. I want to give them a little access. Is that okay?
Yeah,
can we give them some access?
Let's talk about it, yeah.
So I want to really dive into, if I'm watching this and I'm an entrepreneur, I'm hungry, I need access to funding and capital. I've upgraded my life, right? I've shifted my mindset, and I'm ready to take the dive into entrepreneurship. And I see all of these amazing things online that I can get funding, and I can go get, $50,000, no docs. One, is it true? Is it true?
Yeah.
And then two, how do we make this happen?
So it's always true. A lot of things are true when you learn, right? Because the more you learn, the more you earn, right? Like my guy Nehemiah said, you can remove the L, right? And so when it comes to funding, when we be talking about no documentation, it's just understanding that you don't have to provide any tax returns, bank statements, profit and loss. But it depends on what kind of lending product that you're going for. So if you're going for let's say a business credit card or even a personal credit card. Most times on personal credit cards, business credit cards, you don't have to provide any documentation. But if you're graduating to maybe a business line of credit or a business term loan, they do want to see your profit and loss. They do want to see your tax returns. They do want to actually see that you have set up your business properly, but then also that you're keeping up with your paperwork and things like that. And I tell people it's two things that's so counterintuitive. You got the banking system and the financial system and how that works and getting access to capital. And then you got the IRS. Right. So most business owners, when they go and talk to their CPAs, accountants, and things like that, like they try to basically look at the revenue, and then they try to deduct as many expenses as possible so that they don't have to owe the IRS, self-employment tax, different things like that. Right. But what happens is when you do that and you want to get a business line of credit or a business term loan, now your documentation doesn't look strong when it comes to your income. Right. And so this is why most business owners sometimes are forced to business credit cards or the no documentation side, because they are not showing a lot of income. But the reason is because the IRS has a certain tax code. And if you made all this money and you don't write off anything, you don't use the Augusta rule, the 1031 exchange, all the different type of codes that are available to you. Now, like you owe the IRS money, they're going to find a way to take your money, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just two parts to it. So it's just understanding strategy, really, as a business owner. And I would say the easiest thing to get is access to business credit cards, personal credit cards, personal loans, things that you don't necessarily have to provide any income, but you have to have a strong credit profile. And one of the biggest myths that I see, I think, whether, all entrepreneurs and business owners, and because it's not taught in school, I don't care if you went to college, I don't care, where you really got your education from. Most people are not taught how to have a strong credit profile. What are the data points or the different things that go into that? And so because most people aren't taught, they do see the stuff that we talk about online. You can get the 50K, 100K, no docs. You can do this, that, and the third and get access to capital, but they don't understand that, okay, even though you're not providing tax returns, bank statements, profit and loss, what they're looking at is how strong your credit profile is. Do you have, accounts where you have long credit history, 5 years or more? Do you have late payments, charge-offs, collections? Do you have negative items? Because really, your credit report is like a report card to the banks. Mm-hmm. It literally just says, hey, this person is someone who should, you can lend money to, or this person, look, they at risk. They're going to run off with your money, right? And so it's just understanding that if you structure your report in a way where banks can see you as, someone they can do business with, rather than a risk, then yeah, you can get all types of money from the banks without really showing documentation. So the real work is just understanding what needs to go on your credit report, how it needs to be structured, what are underwriters looking for, and then really educating yourself. Whether you go on YouTube and look at the different videos and dive in like I did, or even getting a coach, right? Like I got a coach, I got access to coaching. And that's the biggest thing I think for entrepreneurs is understanding you can be great at your business. You can be great at, understanding what you do as your field, but you also got to understand the literacy side of finances when it comes to credit, or even getting access to grants, because you got to be able to understand that most businesses fail for the number one reason is not getting access to capital. So if you can understand what goes into that, whether it's getting debt-free funding like you talk about, or just understanding what goes into your credit report, and then from that point, you can always get access to whether it's a personal loan, a personal credit card, whether it's, business credit card, 0% interest, you always can go and get access to funding, and then you can pretty much leverage that to grow your business. And then it's also understanding that, that most credit cards have reward points. So a lot of people, I know they spend a lot of cash, but they don't have no rewards. They're not building up any points. They're not getting free flights, free travel. They're not taking advantage of all the other I would say benefits that come with credit. And I think the biggest thing is that most people decide they choose not to educate themselves on how, as a business owner, this financial system that was set up, how it's curated and how it pretty much can work for you. Mm. And that's the biggest thing I think for all of us is just understanding how things work for you. I tell people all the time, like if you're going to work right now and, you're late, let's say you're running late and you see a red light. Okay. Some red lights, if they don't got cameras and the police ain't around, you might, all right, I'm gonna take this red light. But you see the police or you see some cameras, no matter how late you is, like, I don't want this ticket and I'm not trying to get in trouble. Well, that's understanding a system. It's just you're understanding how the system works, and then you're basically leveraging it or taking advantage of it for what you need to do. Most people don't do the same thing with credit, finances, debt-free funding. They just don't understand the system. They don't learn it, and then it operates against them because they never took the time to learn it.
That's powerful. I worked I don't know if you know this, but I worked for Wells Fargo for over 15 years. And what I noticed is people would come inside the bank and they would want access to funding. They would want access to capital, but they wouldn't know, what's required. They didn't have the strong credit profile. They just knew they needed money. Yeah. And most of the time people wait until it's bad. Like they come in when the rent payment is late, or they come in when the business is about to go under, instead of getting credit or getting access to funding when they have the good credit profile or when they don't need it. Right. And so I noticed that people would come inside, they would want access to funding. And I would say about 90% of the people that would come in, I had to decline them. Yeah. And it wasn't a good feeling for me. Yeah. Like, sometimes I wouldn't tell them in their face, I would see the decline pop up on the screen, but I'd be like, oh, we'll call you back in 48 hours. Because I would just be more comfortable telling them over the phone or saying, hey, you're going to get a letter in the mail, instead of me actually telling them, hey, you're declined. Yeah. But I actually applied for a credit card for Wells Fargo when I worked there because I had a business that was struggling at the time. Okay. And they declined me. Okay. And I was like, you know what? It's because I'm not doing all of the things that I'm teaching my clients, all the things that I'm teaching people when they come inside the bank. I wasn't doing it myself. Yeah. I had made a lot of mistakes. I had funded my business out of pocket, and I waited too late to apply for the funding opportunity. So I decided in that moment that I wanted to be the change. I wanted to start teaching people how to get access to funding, how to get access to grants once I started learning about grants. And I believe that you are doing the same. So I want to just provide a little game, because I think one of the biggest misconceptions is, you can get access to this funding, but you have to have the strong personal credit profile. Yeah. How do I build my personal credit profile to position myself to get qualified for funding?
Good question. So I think the number one thing is just understanding that you got to build relationships. I'm big on understanding that most credit unions, right, are really good at just helping people when they're in their early building phases. So one of my favorite ones is Navy Federal. You can start with either one or two, they call them pledge loans, but really a secured loan. So you take money that you already have. And that's another thing about credit. Like, you do have to invest into your credit. You have to make the investment. It's a shift in mindset, because you got to understand that this is the number one thing you got to understand about credit is that with banks, they're going to basically be like business partners. So you got to understand you're going to make an investment, but at the end of the day, they're going to come back and start investing in you and investing into your business, right? Okay. So that's step number one, right? Understand that it's a mindset shift. You got to be willing to invest in this process, and you got to actually lock in and be focused, right? Because most people will start building their credit and then get a late payment, or they forget to do this. Like, you can't do that. So, step one is just actually having the proper mindset to know, like, these banks are going to be my business partners. I'm going to invest in this process. I'm going to learn. I'm going to make sure I lock in. So step one is like your mindset. Two, I would build relationships with credit unions. So, you got Navy Federal is one. And it's a few different credit unions, and it also depends on where you live at. So I would look at, like, Navy Federal is really one of the favorites for me. You got Penn Fed, you got DCU, you got Langley Federal Credit Union, right? So you got multiple different credit unions. What I would do is I would start with secured loans. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot of money. The more money you have, great. But I would at least do, let's say if you can do 2 secure loans at $500 or $1,000 a piece, right? You basically put the money onto the, you go to the bank, you give them the money, they're going to give you a check, right? Navy Federal does it with no hard inquiry, right? Most of your credit unions, and that's the major question to ask, is will you do the secure loan without doing a hard inquiry, right? Because you don't want to get a bunch of hard inquiries as you're building your credit out, right? So let's say we start with 2 secured loans. You pay 80%, I would say 80 to 90% of it off right away, and then you want to let the other 10% kind of ride out, right? So now you got 2 secured loans. Another thing is you got Kickoff, right? Kickoff is really decent. You can pay $35 a month and get a $3,500 trade line secured credit card as well. That's a really, decent way to kind of start putting, credit limits on your actual report. I like Self-Lender. Self-Lender to me is pretty decent because it starts teaching people to make on-time payments every single month. So you can add Self-Lender. So if we do the 2 secured loans, we do the Kickoff, we do Self-Lender, we're not at like four different, primary trade lines, which means that now you yourself, right, are responsible for the debt and things like that. Another one that I've been teaching people and telling people is rent reporters. Rent reporters will report your rent. So if you know somebody who owns a home, you can actually say that your landlord. Now, the thing about rent reporters is that you can backdate it up to 10 years. Right. So when you go to rent reporters, you make the payment, you can backdate it 10 years. They're going to ask you for a lease. Go to ChatGPT, have it draft you a lease, pretty much put, a date that's 10 years ago. the person that if it's a family member or friend who owns a home, just go to them, let them know that essentially rent reporters is going to ask them to have a conversation and kind of verify your rent payments. And what happens is that essentially you can give rent reporters like, you know, the information for the landlord, your friend, family member, whatever the case may be. They'll reach out and verify the information, but as long as everything is good, they'll report it, right? But with rent reporters, you can say you're paying $3 grand, $4 grand, $5 grand a month. So imagine doing, let's say you do $3 grand a month for your rent. You backed it at least 10 years. So now you have a backdated primary that's, you know, 10 years old that, you know, basically you're saying you're paying about $3 grand a month. So rent reporters, we got Kickoff, we got Self-Lender, we got 2 secure credit cards. 2 secure loans. We're at roughly around, you know, 5 primary accounts, right? Now, another thing is that, you know, now that you have these relationships and you got about 5 primary accounts, now you can look at some authorized users. So, you know, you got other friends and family members who have credit cards where you can add yourself as an authorized user. You do got to be careful with that because, you know, you want to make sure you get with people that make on-time payments, right? And that keep their utilization low. So that's something that you can do. And then you got websites like, you know, Trade Line Supply, you got Trade Line Genie. Those are different websites that also offer trade lines that you can pretty much buy. And they kind of do the vetting process for you to make sure that, you know, people are doing on-time payments and got like low utilization and stuff like that. And so I would add about 2 of those. So now you're at roughly, you know, 7, pretty much 8 accounts. So now your credit profile pretty much is, you know, as a solid structure. Right now, another thing that I would do is if you're working, if you have a job, I would set up your direct deposit for, you know, if you're going to go with Navy Federal, go with Navy Federal and set your direct deposit up there because they have an internal scoring method. Most credit unions have internal scoring. So what happens is that now when you get the direct deposit, you're now building a relationship and you're building your internal scoring with the credit unions. And then from there, you know, you can apply for like some of your first credit cards. What I would say is look at places like Capital One where you can do a pre-qualification. Look at like Discover where you can pre-qualify as well, right? Even with Navy Federal, you can pre-qualify. So then you can start pre-qualifying for some of those cards and seeing if the banks are, you know, like the credit profile. And from there, now you kind of, you know, are in business, right? As long as you have the backdated primary, you add some authorized users that got some age on it. Now pretty much you kind of have a decent solid profile that you built out. And, you know, and then another thing that really helps, you know, credit profiles is auto loans too, you know, because it's a different type of collateralized loan, but you can pretty much get a higher limit. And a lot of times you can go to your credit union and pre-qualify or get a pre-approval for an auto loan and take that check to, you know, the actual dealership. And then now you have an auto loan as well. So those are the things that I would tell people kind of starting out, just the bare base bones of your credit report. One, if that's the case, that means you have nothing negative so far. You have age on your credit report. You have primary accounts that you're responsible for, and you have a different mix of type of accounts. You got loans, secure loans. You got some credit cards. And you're in a situation where you got 8, 9 accounts, 7, 8, 9 accounts roughly around there. So now you look like someone who understands credit. And the other thing is just like when it comes to people having negative items. So, you know, if you're looking at this and you have negative items, you got to leverage ChatGPT. You know, what I tell people is that you can literally, go on a website. You can do annualcreditreport.com or get a credit report that has all 3. You upload your credit report to ChatGPT, and then you're going to ask ChatGPT to draft in a dispute affidavit. So most people are just asking for dispute letters, you know, but affidavits are really official sworn statements. And you as a consumer, you're like federally protected. So if you use an actual affidavit, it actually holds a little bit more power. So you can ask it to draft a dispute affidavit, leveraging. And this is really important. You want to leverage UCC. So I like to leverage the Uniform Commercial Code, right? So leveraging the UCC laws and say, hey, draft me a dispute affidavit, leveraging the UCC laws that goes against everything that pretty much is negative or derogatory on my credit report, right? What Chat is going to do is basically, you know, it's going to spit out all 3 affidavits for TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. I tell people to get it notarized. So you can go to notarylive.com, which is an online website where you can notarize any document 24 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, you can set up an account with Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, and you can upload everything with your ID and like a utility bill. You can upload everything straight to the website and do it that way. And if you want to be really aggressive after they confirm the upload in 24 to 48 hours, just pick up the phone and call them and try to expedite getting the negative items pretty much deleted off the credit report.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so dope.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that you could. Okay. Listen, I am taking notes and I am learning as well. That's so powerful. And I think, it just goes back to what we said earlier, how you are impacting and changing lives. Because once we get this credit profile cleaned up, it's not just about walking in the bank and getting access to funding. It's literally life changing. And the things that you can do when you have a good personal credit profile. I mean, home ownership, buying real estate or investments. It's, getting access to the funding. It opens up the door for a lot of opportunities. What's some things that you have been, starting from your journey of being broke to now having probably millions of dollars in funding at your fingertips? What's some opportunities you've been able to personally leverage that are available for you?
I focus personally myself on real estate. Back home in Baltimore, where I'm from, like properties are, still at a decent amount where you can buy them. You could basically fix them. So you gotta, the biggest thing about real estate is that you have to find the proper contractor, because most contractors be conning, so let's start with that. But you got to find a decent contractor. But yeah, I focused on like leveraging real estate. So last year we did a fix and flip where we actually sold a property. I'm actually working on one right now, and I'm going to be buying one probably in about 2-3 weeks. And essentially, we're going to basically start building a rental portfolio. Myself, I also haven't taken advantage of the FHA, basically with FHA, you can actually do, you can do an FHA loan where you do 3.5% down on a multifamily. So I'm also going, like right now, I'm in the process of talking to the realtor, looking at 3 or 4 units back home in Baltimore, where I'll do 3.5% down on a 3 unit. And I'm technically you're supposed to live in for 1 year. So what I plan on doing is just renting out the other 2 units, and the other unit that I'm going to be living in most likely will be on Airbnb, but being able to kind of turn it into a cash flowing asset. So I've been really just focusing more on that. I think another thing with funding, especially when you're in business, is understanding where you can spend money to directly affect the marketing, right? Because most of us got to really focus on building our brand and then understanding marketing, right? And so if you can look at where, if you get access to funding where you can spend the money on things that's directly going to make you money, that's the best thing. So in my business, we've been looking at, I really wasn't running ads. As I did a lot of organic, but, lately I've been kind of getting into the ads and running the ads and stuff like that, and looking at the different returns and things like that, and getting with a proper team with that. Shadow pages, right? So making sure that we can kind of just continue to put our brand and name out there, because the more you spend on marketing, the more they know you, the more they can spend money with you. And so I think a lot of people where entrepreneurs mess up too is they get access to funding and they start buying like equipment or things that don't necessarily make the money. So it might be something that enhances what you got going on, but it doesn't necessarily affect the bottom line, right? It doesn't get you in front of new clients and new people and new customers. So those are the things I really tell business owners, entrepreneurs to spend money on, right? And then the other thing is just getting in rooms and building your mindset, because, for you to earn more, like I said, you got to learn more. And so most people just focus on, things that really don't make the money, don't really develop their mindset. And so even as an entrepreneur, the number one investment that you always can make is the one that you make into your own mind. And so I think that's very, very important. So that's really what I focus on. I spend money in getting different masterminds myself, running ads and things like that, but really, really like heavily on real estate and focusing on building assets. Because a lot of times I think with us in our culture, like we don't come from ownership. Right. We always work for other people who have ownership. And so now it's really important that, even if you're making money, you got to start looking at ownership and how you can pass something down to the next generation. Because in some cases, right, generational wealth or passing things down, we've seen people be successful in business, but they didn't pass anything down. We've seen people, do certain things in business and it's glorified, but then, they didn't understand how to put the proper channels in place. But then you got families like the Rothschilds, or you got families where they got is wealth, from generation, from decade to decade to decade. And so I think for us, that's a big misnomer. And we got to really figure that out, how we can not only control money, control certain assets, but then also be able to put certain people in place to like carry out an actual legacy. So that's something that, even for me, we got to really work on and think about.
That's so powerful. That's so good. When you spoke about, people getting access to funding, it made me think about my mom. My mom has a powerful credit profile. Right. She's always had good credit. And she recently retired, and I was like, is there a business that you would want to start or something that you would want to do? And she's like, I'm trying to think about it. Right. She sits in my courses and my classes, and
right.
She works for me now. So she's like, I do need to start something. But I'm like, you could get access to business funding. These are some things that you can do. And she's so afraid of it.
Yeah.
She's so afraid of, she was like, I just don't understand how people are getting access to all of this money. And then what do they do next? And then how are they paying it back? So it brings up a good point, because there are a lot of people, because they don't educate they don't have the proper financial literacy before they get access to the funding. I think they go out and they get access to this capital or clean up their credit profile, and then they end back in the same space that they were before. So how are you tracking? Like, what are some things that I can do to make sure, one, that I'm using this funding to reinvest it back into my business and brand? And I love that you talked about the marketing piece, but how to make sure that I am using this to the better good, to better my position and get me to another financial stage.
Yeah. So it really just comes down to skill sets. I think that, you know, one of the reasons why entrepreneurs or business owners end up they fix their credit profile, and then they end up in the same position is because they didn't gain any new skills along the way. Right. And so, like, I was having a conversation with one of my, you know, somebody I got some access to funding, and it's like they get access to funding and they call me back 3 months later. Yeah, yo, I need more access to funding. And it's like, okay, what did you do with the last round of funding that you pretty much got access to? And what I hear is that some people will try to use the funding to, like, not have to go to work, or they'll, you know, start using the funding in ways like take care of their lifestyle. And it's like, that's not a proper way to look at funding. But what I realize is that when people get access to money, they don't have a coach. They don't have an actual roadmap on how they're going to actually be successful. And I tell people all the time that, you know, when you look at people like Michael Jordan was one of the greatest basketball players that ever touched the basketball, right? But he did not win anything until he got with Phil Jackson. Mm-hmm. So from 86 to 91, there was no championships won. Now, was it different things where he was successful? Yes, but he still didn't get to the pinnacle without the proper coaching and the proper people around him. And so I think that a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, just because they get access to capital, one, we talked about environment earlier, the people around them, right, are not conducive to their success and to their mind and growing their mind. And then they don't go and get coaching. They don't go and pay for coaching. Some people are unwilling to buy, or get in the rooms, pay for coaching. And for whatever reason, especially in our culture, we laugh at people who are smart, people who actually learn something, right? And, like, you know, I remember going to Baltimore, and it was like, if you knew something, you know, people laugh at you. But if you was dumb, it was kind of like, it was cool to be dumb. And I don't know where that came from in our community, but I will say that the biggest thing that people have to do not to return to the same position they were in before is get a coach, right? Someone that comes from where you come from, that understands the traumas, the environments, the things you've been through, but also have gotten to a certain level of success, and that can walk you through, you know, pretty much what that looks like. And I think that even in other communities, we've seen people like Tony Robbins, we've seen some of these other people that have charged, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or, you know, thousands of dollars for certain conferences. But we got to be willing to do the same thing for ourselves and stop looking at investing in ourselves as something that's negative, right? When you talked about holding on to the money or being afraid, you know, most people are afraid because they lack education. You lack knowledge. You know, anytime you walk down a road that you've never been down before, you're going to be afraid, right? But what I tell people is that you're either growing or you're dying. And so a lot of times people are dying because they're not doing something that's uncomfortable. And if you're not doing something that's uncomfortable, at the end of the day, you're definitely dying as a person. So you got to put yourself in different things where it's like you're growing, where it's uncomfortable, where you're learning new things. And so that's how, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, how you can not return to where you come from. But you got to constantly be growing, right? You got to constantly be reaching for the pinnacle. You know, even like trees, they'll go, you know, a tree, natural thing is it's going to grow to the highest length it can possible. But with humans, because God gave us that choice, we actually choose not to grow. We choose not to become the best that we can become. You know, we actually make the decision just to stay stagnant, be comfortable. And a lot of times it be the friends and the people that we hang around that makes us think it's okay. You know, and that was my thing. I really, like, when I was growing up, I watched out for that. Like, even when I started my entrepreneur journey, I watched out for people that made me think it was okay to be normal, made me think it's okay to be average. To me, too often we hang around people and it's like they're average, so they want you to be average. No, I'm not with that. I'm looking for people that want to be above average, that want to be phenomenal. And if I can't find that in my environment, in my friend group, then, like, it's just my who I'm listening to, what I'm reading every single day. So maybe it's not your friends, but maybe you got to start reading. You got to get in different environments, and you can change that. So I think that's the biggest thing for business owners, entrepreneurs. You know, make sure you're looking for environments that, you know, that want you to thrive, that challenge you, that want you to be better, that make you become better, that make you grow, that make you read certain books, make you challenge the way that you think, you know, all those kind of things, and really just makes you be uncomfortable. If you're in a situation where you're comfortable, I mean, you got to look at it like you're dying.
That's so good. I always tell people all the time, you know, when I started my journey, my coaching journey, I was actually forced into it. So I say I was fired into freedom.
Okay.
So I actually was forced into entrepreneurship. Wells Fargo terminated me for teaching this information. Okay. And as I'm coaching, you know, I'm making a couple of $1,000s a month. And, you know, I had a couple of months where I was making $10,000, which was good, right? Okay. It was more than what I was making at Wells Fargo. But then I came into a room, I came to an event, and I heard that people were making 10,000 an hour or 10,000 a day.
Yeah.
And, you know, these were rooms of 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs. And it was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's so much more out there available for me. So I'm trying to figure it out on my own. I'm going, you know, to different challenges, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, they're doing this, they're doing that, and I'm trying to make it happen myself, and I'm making so many mistakes.
Yeah.
And these mistakes are costing me money. And then I hired a coach. Okay. I got a coach, a partnership and a coach and a mentor. And now we're at like $100,000 days, right? So it's the shift in mindset that really started it. But then realizing that I couldn't do this on my own. Like it really takes a village. You know, we say it takes a village all the time, but we talk about surrounding our kids with a village to raise the kids. No, in entrepreneurship, it takes a village too. And I think the biggest mistake a lot of times is that we try to do it ourselves. We try to figure it out. We try to hold on to our money. We're scared to make the investments because, we made a bad investment before, or, you know, something didn't go through before. But when I got that coach, when I got that mentor, when I found the missing piece to my puzzle, somebody who was already doing the work, we were able to successfully, like, truly scale the business and brand. And I think that's what entrepreneurs are missing out on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I thank you for touching on that piece. So you talk a lot about self-development. You talk a lot about, and I love that, you know, and this is why I love Access Granted so much, because I know your story, but I got to learn, like, see Chief SBS in a different light. Okay. And I love that. But you talk a lot about, you know, just, you know, investing in you and reading more and doing more. Give me maybe three of your top, like, must read books or YouTube videos, things that the audience can.
You know, what's crazy, you know, just speaking on, like, what you talk about the partnership program, you know, number one, and this is really crazy, but Nehemiah Davis, you know what I'm saying? Like, I love turning the music off, right? Like, because, you know, we come from soul, we come from different beats, you know, like we, that aura, right? And so one of the things about, like, listening to, like, some of the Jim Rohns, and Jim Rohn was really powerful too. So I'll talk definitely him too as well. But one of the things I'll listen to that, even like Eric Thomas, like Eric be doing a lot of yelling, you know, and it's stuff that you need, but it don't got music behind it, right? And so when Nehemiah came out, or when I first, like, learned about Nehemiah, and I like seen that he had, like, stuff on Apple Music, you know, I downloaded it all. But what I loved about the Neo was, like, it had beats. So now I could really listen to it all day, every day, because it was kind of like music in a sense, but it was like development, like, no excuses, you know, certain things that he talks about in terms of, like, working hard, grinding, you know, what's your why, like, all the kind of things he talked about. So really, I would say when I was in Baltimore, and I still was in Baltimore, Maryland, and I got access to his Apple Music, I really used to listen to that every single day, right? I listened to that every single day. Now, part of that was I had already been listening to Jim Rohn. I had already been listening to certain success principles. You know, Challenge to Succeed was one of my big ones by Jim Rohn. So I would say that, right? Because it talks about your philosophy. He got a 2-hour thing on YouTube. I can't think of it right off this hand, but I used to listen to that as well. And it was a lot about changing your philosophy, right? Because even in multi-level marketing, one of the things he says, I can give you all the skills. I can give you, you know, all the tools, all the things to success, but it's your philosophy that has to make it work, right? And it's understanding, like, you know, when you pay all your bills, like most people, where I'm from in Baltimore, right, it'd be like, oh, like, they try to pay their bills late, right? And like Jim Rohn said, hey, like, you don't want to reduce your liabilities and increase your assets, right? But that has to be a mindset shift, because most of the time we think that we pay our bills and it's like, you know, you're increasing your actual assets, the money that you actually do have, and you're basically decreasing your liabilities. So being able to change mindset is very important. So Jim Rohn was one. Neo was really inclusive every day, because I could turn the music off and I could turn it on. So I used to ride around and listen to that literally every single day, you know, from even when I lived in Baltimore, when I moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That was very, very intricate, being able to kind of listen to that, because it had the music and stuff behind it. And then, so, I mean, I listened to so many different people. Eric Thomas is really, really powerful. Was really powerful as well. I downloaded all his stuff on Apple Music. I listened to a lot of Les Brown as well. Mm-hmm. I listened to a lot of, like, people that came from where I come from, if that makes sense, right? So I think you gotta, when it comes to personal development, I think that everybody has their own, like, I want to say like you're gonna find people that you really vibe with, I say. And it's like you got to find what works for you. But for me, it was people that came from where I came from. So even Les Brown, I used to listen to him a lot, because he used to talk about like teachers telling him he wasn't gonna be successful and people saying that he wasn't gonna do this, that, and third, and then like just like not believing in what people tell you, right? So but yeah, a lot of Nehemiah, because that just had the music behind it, got the soul, and then kind of talk about different things that, when it's social media, what to do when it comes to like your mindset, making no excuses, stuff like that really was key. I listened to a lot of Jim Rohn. That was like when I was still doing network marketing and I would ride around all day and I had the CDs and then the CD player. So that was really key. And then I would say definitely like Les Brown. Some books, I mean, I've read like Think and Grow Rich. That's a really, really, really good book. I do listen to Napoleon Hill too, but you got to be different. You got to be a little different to listen to Napoleon Hill. And I would say another huge thing is like affirmations, like listening to different affirmations on YouTube. Like, when I go to sleep, I like to turn like affirmations on, like the 8-hour ones at night and stuff like that. I turn that on. And then like even during the day, if I'm taking a shower, I like to listen to affirmations and stuff like that. They kind of got that calming music, but it be having like different affirmations and stuff like that. Because a lot of it, a really success is really mainly inner work, right? It's a battle in the mind every single day, so a lot of people watch too much news. They watch too much negativity. They watching too much stuff that really, really, really is negative, right? It's negative. And so if you watch negative, you listen to negative, even with the music, the Futures, I used to like all that stuff, but I kind of turned a lot of that off because a lot of it is negative. It pours negative into your soul. And so if you think about that, right, you're going to basically start doing negative things. You're going to think negative. You're going to be negative, right? Because it's all about what you're putting in you. And so I think, those are the things though. So Les Brown, definitely Jim Rohn, definitely turned on Nehemiah Davis, Napoleon Hill. I've listened to Bob Proctor. Those are like, I would say my top 5. And then I would really, really say, you got to start listening to it every single day though, because for you to make changes in your life, think about like how long you listen to music, how long we listen to music growing up. Like we used to bump that every single day. You can listen to music and know every single word. You can know the different beats, the ad libs and things like that. But when it comes to development, you don't know anything about that. You know what I'm saying? You don't know that word for word. So I got to the point where I started focusing on my development every single day, pouring it to me every single day. So I think life is really just about like, the compound effect. Like, Darren Hardy got a book called The Compound Effect. And so if you really just start listening to different stuff every day, you feed your mind every single day, you listen to the affirmations every day, right? Your life will slowly begin to change, for real. And I mean, at the end of the day, the greatest book is always going to be the Bible, and just being tapped into Jesus Christ for sure. So definitely thankful for that. I mean, he's definitely like the Lord and Savior. Wouldn't be nowhere without him. So I really he should be number one. So I messed up on that one, but definitely that and everything else that I talked about as well.
It's amazing. So you have a community where you work with entrepreneurs and teach them how to restore their credit and prepare them for funding. Before we close out, I want you to just tell people about your amazing community, how they can tap into it, and of course, how they can work with you and get ready to elevate and go to the next level. Yeah,
for sure. So we have a community where we help people with one, like, credit repair, right? Being able to help you remove the negative items off your credit. And we also teach you how to structure your credit, right? So everything I talked about earlier in terms of putting the proper data points on your credit report, we actually look at your credit report. We tell you exactly from where you are today and what you need to do. And we give you those actual step-by-step guidelines, right? And then from there, we also can help you with the funding. So we help you get access to personal funding, business funding, as well, depending on what your situation is and what your goals are, right? And then another thing that we also do, and I'm really, really excited about, is we're teaching people how to basically start their own business and make multiple 6 and 7 figures from their phone, right? It's starting their credit repair company, starting their funding company. And we also teach you how to market. The biggest thing about most businesses, they fail because they don't access capital, but the other side, they don't know how to market, leverage social media, and understanding, right, that if you put out proper content, value content, educational content, that you'll have people knocking at your door begging to work with you. So, those are all the different things that we do. But I'm really super excited about helping people make multiple 6 and 7 figures from their phone, because it pretty much that's what changed my life. Once I understood that we can post content and that we could really, really be able to give people value and make money, And the thing that's so crazy is that we also get paid from the platform. So you can get paid from YouTube, you can get paid from Facebook, you can get paid from Instagram to create content, to build your brand, but then also you can also get paid from your customers. So it's one of the greatest times to be alive when it comes to social media and what's happening right now in business. And a lot of people are just not taking advantage of it because they're used to doing things the old way, going to work 40, 50, 60 hours, retiring on less than what they could live off of before, building their 401ks. And it's nothing wrong with that if that's your thing. But, in the time that we live in today, you got to have another stream of income, and you have to position yourself to understand that with AI and everything that's happening, that you could lose your job in a blink of an eye, right? Because, I tell people all the time that your job, at the end of the day, if something happens to you, they're going to move on without you, right? And so it's really important for you to really start your own business, start your own enterprise, and start really understanding the different ways to make money, especially with AI, especially with the smartphones, especially with content and social media. So yeah, if you're definitely looking to tap in, you can just DM me at Chief SBS on Instagram. You can follow me or subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. We just hit 55,000 subscribers. So really just excited about what we got going on in business. But yeah, man, it's really about starting your own business, starting your own enterprise, and let's get the multiple 6 and 7 figures.
I love it. You guys, this has been another amazing episode of Access Granted. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this with 3 other entrepreneurs or people that you love that could benefit from this information. Chief, thank you so much for being a part of Access Granted.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you. I love what you got going on. I think it's important to help entrepreneurs in any way possible, right? Marketing, debt-free funding, and just even with mindset. So, coming from Nashville, being fired in the freedom, that's an amazing story. So I'm just blessed to be a part of it. And, I love to see your growth and everything you got going on.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, that's Access Granted.